Welcome to Everlast CompTIA A Plus Certification Exam Practice Question Series. In this video, we'll dive deep into TCP and UDP port protocols, and this is an important knowledge for any aspiring networking enthusiast. With 25 engaging questions, you will challenge your understanding and reinforce your skills in no time. So let's dive right in. Question 1. Which protocol and ports can be used to securely transfer files between two Linux servers? A. UDP 53. B. TCP 22. C. UDP 67. D. TCP 389. The answer here will be option B. TCP 22. This is used by the SMTP and SSH, both of which can securely transfer files between two Linux servers. Now, it wouldn't have been option A, the UDP 53, because that is used for DNS. And DNS, we know, is responsible for translating domain names into IP addresses. It would also not be UDP 67, because that is used by DHCP, and DHCP automatically assigns IP addresses to devices on a network. The TCP 389 is used by LDAP, and LDAP is used for accessing and maintaining distributed directory information services over a network. Question 2. A technician is troubleshooting connectivity issues accessing a web server. Which port needs to be open to allow secure access to the web server? A. 80. B. 53. C. 25. D. 443. Going through the options, port 80 is used by HTTP, which is not secure because the data is transmitted unencrypted. Port 53 is used by DNS to translate domain names into IP addresses, but it does not relate to secure web server access. Port 25 is used by the SMTP, or Simple Mail Transfer Protocol, and this is used for sending emails but not for accessing the web server. Port 443, on the other hand, is used by HTTPS, and HTTPS is Hypertext Transfer Protocol Secure, and this allows secure communication between a web browser and a server. So we'll be going with option D, 443. When accessing a web server securely using HTTPS, the communication is encrypted, and this ensures that the data exchange between the client and the server is protected. Question 3. What port does SMTP use for sending emails? A. 80. B. 25. C. 143. D. 67. Like we've mentioned earlier, port 80 is used by HTTP for web traffic. Port 25 is used by SMTP for sending emails. Port 143 is used by IMAP for retrieving emails, while port 67 is used by DHCP for IP address assignment. So we'll be going with option B here. The Simple Mail Transfer Protocol uses port 25 for sending emails. Question 4. A user reports slowness in accessing files on a file server. Which ports uses TCP for file and print sharing? We'll be choosing two options here. Option A, 445. B, 135 to 139. C, 161 and 162. D, 389. Port 445 is used by the server message block over TCP, and this is commonly used for file and print sharing in the modern Windows networks. Ports 135 and 139 are used by the NetBIOS protocol suites, and this is used over TCP for the older versions of file and print sharing services. Port 161 and 162 are used by the Simple Network Management Protocol, or SNMP, for network management, but it's not used for file or print sharing. While Port 389 is used by LDAP for accessing and maintaining distributed directory information services. So the two options we'll be going with here are options A and B. Port 445 is used by SMB over TCP, while ports 135 and 139 are used by the NetBIOS protocol. Now, specifically, port 135 is used by the Microsoft RPC service. Port 137 is used by the NetBIOS name service. Port 138 is used by NetBIOS datagram service, while port 139 is used by NetBIOS session service for file sharing, and these are used over TCP. Question 5. Which protocol uses port 161 for network management? A. SNMP. B. LDAP. C. HTTPS. D. SMTP. For this, we'll be going with option A, the SNMP. Simple Network Management Protocol uses port 161 for network management and monitoring. The others use them for different purposes. The other options are not the answers. LDAP is used for accessing directory services. HTTP is used for secure web traffic, and SMTP is used for sending emails. So for this, correct answer here is the SNMP. Question 6. EverlastCyber wants to implement LDAP. Which TCP port should be open on the LDAP server to allow implementation? A. 3389. B. 389. C. 443. D. 8080. Port 3389 is used by the Remote Desktop Protocol for remote desktop connections. Port 389, on the other hand, is used by LDAP over TCP for accessing and maintaining distributed directory information service, such as managing user credentials and permissions. Port 443 is used by HTTPS, while port 8080 is often used by the web servers as an alternative to port 80. So for this question, our answer is option B, port 389. Question 7. Which protocol and ports should be permitted to allow DHCP traffic on a network? We'll be choosing two options here. A. TCP 67. B. TCP 68. C. UDP 67. D. UDP 68. For options A and B, those will be the wrong answers because DHCP does not use TCP. It only operates over UDP. So our answers here will be options C and D. DHCP uses port 67 for the DHCP server to listen for and receive client requests, while port 68 is used to receive responses from the DHCP server like the DHCP offer, the DHCP ACK, and DHCP not ACK. Question 8. A network engineer needs to ensure that email clients can securely retrieve messages from an email server. Which protocol and port should be used? A. TCP 110. B. UDP 67. C. TCP 995. D. UDP 53. TCP 110 is used by POP3 to retrieve emails, but this is not secure. UDP 67 is used by DHCP for IP address assignments. TCP 995 is used by POP3S, which is POP3 secure, for securely retrieving emails over SSL and TLS. While UDP 53 is used by DNS for name resolution. So with respect to the question we have here, the network engineer needs to ensure that email clients can securely retrieve messages from an email server. So the best answer to go with here is option C, TCP 995, which uses POP3 secure to securely retrieve emails over SSL TLS. Question 9. Which UDP port should a SOHO router use to forward DNS queries to the ISP's DNS server? SOHO network here is small office, home office router. So the options we have: A. 25, B. 53, C. 88, D. 123. Port 25 is used by SMTP to send emails. Port 53 is used by DNS to query and resolve domain names into IP addresses. Port 88 is used by Kerberos for network authentication, while port 123 is used by the Network Time Protocol for time synchronization across devices on a network. So with respect to the question we have here, the best option will be option B, port 53. DNS uses the UDP port 53 to query and resolve domain names into IP addresses. So when a small office home office router forwards DNS queries to an ISP's DNS servers, it uses port 53 to do that. Question 10. Which protocol uses port 67 for assigning IP addresses? A. DNS. B. DHCP. C. FTP. D. IMAP. Now, when we hear that a port assigns IP addresses, we should know that it's only DHCP that can do that. So we'll be going with option B here, DHCP. DHCP assigns IP addresses to devices on the network. Question 11. What protocol should be enabled to allow a network administrator manage routers securely from a central location? A. SNMP. B. DHCP. C. SSH. D. HTTPS. Option A, the SNMP is used for network management and monitoring, but it is not secure. DHCP is used to dynamically assign IP addresses to devices on a network. However, it is not used for secure management of network devices. SSH, on the other hand, is a protocol that is used to securely manage network devices, including routers, from a central location. HTTPS is a protocol that is used for secure web browsing and accessing web-based management interfaces. For this, we'll be going with option C with respect to the question. SSH provides encrypted communication, thereby ensuring that management commands and data are securely transmitted over the network. Question 12. Email messages from a mail server are being rejected as spam by recipients. Which ports should be open for outgoing SMTP traffic? A. 22. B. 143. C. 110. D. 25. Port 22 is used by SSH for secure remote access, but it is not related to SMTP. Port 143 is used by IMAP for retrieving and managing emails on a mail server. Port 110 is used by POP3 to retrieve emails from a mail server, while port 25 is used by SMTP to send outgoing emails from a mail server. So with respect to the question, the ports that should be open for outgoing SMTP traffic is port 25, which is option D. If email messages are being rejected as spam, ensuring that this port is open and properly configured is important for the email server to send emails to other servers without it being recognized as spam. Question 13. A database administrator is configuring a MySQL database server. Which port should be opened for client connections? A. TCP 3306. B. UDP 67. C. TCP 1433. D. UDP 69. For this, we'll be going with option A. TCP 3306 is used by MySQL for database connections. The other options will not be the answer. UDP 67 is used by DHCP for IP address assignment. TCP 1433 is used by SQL Server for database connections, but not MySQL. UDP 69 is used by TFTP for simple file transfers. Question 14. Which port should be open for VPN traffic to allow remote users securely access the corporate network over the internet? A. 88. B. 53. C. 3389. D. 443. Port 88 is used by Kerberos for authentication services. Port 53 is used by DNS for resolving domain names into IP addresses. Port 3389 is used by the Remote Desktop Protocol for remote desktop connections. while port 443 is used by HTTPS traffic, and this is commonly used by the VPN solutions, especially for SSL TLS based VPNs. So for this, we'll be going with option D. This port is often chosen because it is typically open on most networks, and this makes it easier for remote users to connect securely over the internet. Question 15. A university student needs to connect remotely to the school library database. Which port and protocol should be enabled to allow the connection? A. UDP 88, B. UDP 53, C. TCP 23, D. TCP 80. UDP 88, like we've said before, is used by Kerberos for authentication. UDP 53 is used by DNS. TCP 23 is used by Telnet, and this provides unencrypted remote command line access, but it is not used for database access due to the security concerns involved. TCP 80 is used by the Hypertext Transfer Protocol. So if the school library database is accessed through a web-based interface, TCP port 80 should be enabled to allow the remote connection through a web browser. So we'll be going with option D here. Question 16. A network technician needs to troubleshoot a network issue related to NetBIOS name resolution. Which port should be checked for connectivity issues? A. UDP 137, B. TCP 137, C. TCP 139, D. UDP 139. For this, we'll be going with option A, UDP 137, because the NetBIOS name service uses this port for name resolution, and this is part of the NetBIOS protocol suite. Option B, TCP 135, the NetBIOS name service does not use TCP. It generally operates over UDP. So option B and C are out of it. Looking at option D, UDP 139, the NetBIOS datagram service uses this port for broadcasting and communication, but it is not used for name resolution. So that's why we're going with option A, UDP 137. The NetBIOS name service uses this port for name resolution, and this port is essential for resolving the NetBIOS names into IP addresses on the network. Question 17. An administrator wants to enable SSL TLS for emails. Which protocol and port should be used for this purpose? A. TCP 25, B. TCP 110, C. TCP 143, D. TCP 993. TCP 25 is used by SMTP for sending emails. TCP 110 is used by POP3 for retrieving emails. TCP 143 is used by IMAP for retrieving emails, while TCP 993 is used by IMAP Secure, and this is an IMAP protocol over SSL TLS for email retrieval. So we'll be going with option D. This port is used by IMAP Secure, and this is the IMAP protocol over SSL TLS for secure email retrieval. Question 18. Which protocol should be implemented for managing network devices with a connectionless communication network? A. SSH, B. SNMP, C. TCP, D. UDP. SSH is used for secure remote management, and it operates over TCP. And TCP is a connection-based protocol, so that's not the answer we're looking for. Option B, SNMP, is used for managing network devices, and it operates over UDP. And UDP is a connectionless communication network, so that's likely the answer, but let's take a look at the other options. Option C, TCP, is a connection-oriented protocol used for providing reliable and error-checked delivery of data. So that's out of it. While UDP is a connectionless protocol used by SNMP, however, it is not a management protocol on its own. So the answer we're looking at here is option B. The SNMP does not establish a connection before sending data, and it does not guarantee delivery. So the protocol that should be implemented for managing network devices with a connectionless communication network is option B, the SNMP. Question 19. Which port is commonly used by the Telnet protocol? A, 22, B, 23, C, 25, D, 110. The answer here for Telnet is option B, port 23, which is used for unsecure remote access. Question 20. A company wants to monitor network devices using a protocol that allows both read and write access. Which protocol and port should be used for this? TCP 389, TCP 161, UDP 389, UDP 161. TCP 389 is used by LDAP, and this is used for directory services but not for network management. For option B, SNMP operates over UDP port 161, however, it doesn't use TCP. While SNMP allows read and write access, it does so by using UDP and not TCP. UDP 389 is used by LDAP for directory services, however, it is not used for network management, while UDP 161 is used by SNMP and it allows both read and write access for managing and monitoring network devices. So the likely answer we're looking at here is option D. SNMP enables querying for information, which is read access, and also configuring or modifying settings, which is write access on network devices. So that's why we're going with this answer. Question 21. Which protocol and port should be used to enable remote desktop connections to a Windows server? A, UDP 161, B, TCP 3389, C, TCP 23, D, UDP 389. The remote desktop protocol uses TCP, so we should be looking at options B or C. We've eliminated options A and D because we've already established that the RDP uses TCP. So let's take a look at the two options we have for TCP. TCP 3389 is used by RDP for remote desktop connections to Windows servers, while TCP 23 is used by Telnet for unsecure remote command line access. So the question is asking, which port and protocol should be used to enable remote desktop connections to a Windows server? So that will be option B. This protocol allows users to connect to and control a remote Windows desktop over the network. So the answer here is port 3389. Question 22. A system administrator needs to set up a network printer for sharing across the local network. Which port should be opened for this purpose? A, TCP 21, B, UDP 68, C, TCP 9100, D, TCP 143. TCP 21 is used by FTP for file transfer. UDP 68 is used by DHCP for client-side communication. TCP 9100 is used by many network printers for direct printing, while TCP 143 is used by IMAP for email retrieval. So with respect to the question we have here, the correct answer would be option C, TCP 9100, which is used by many network printers for direct printing. Question 23. Brenda needs to synchronize their computer's clock with a network time server. Which port should be used? A, TCP 80, B, UDP 123, C, UDP 67, D, TCP 21. TCP 80 is used by HTTP for web traffic. Now remember, this is unsecure. UDP 123 is used by the network time protocol for time synchronization. UDP 67 is used by DHCP for IP address assignments, while TCP 21 is used by FTP for file transfer. So with respect to the question where Brenda has to synchronize her computer's clock with a network time server? That will be option B, UDP 123, which is used by the network time protocol for time synchronization of devices across a network. Question 24. A network service needs to provide directory services over a network. Which protocol and port should be used? A, TCP 389, B, TCP 22, C, UDP 137, D, TCP 3389. For this, we'll be going with option A, TCP 389, which is used by LDAP or Lightweight Directory Access Protocol for directory services. The other options, TCP 22 is used by SSH for remote access, UDP 137 is used by Network BIOS Name Service, while TCP 3389 is used by remote desktop connections. Question 25. A network administrator is setting up a remote access solution that needs to use a protocol for secure connections and also supports both text and graphical interfaces. Which protocol and port should be used? A, TCP 3389, B, UDP 67, C, TCP 21, D, UDP 161. TCP 3389 is used by the Remote Desktop Protocol for secure remote access. UDP 67 is used by DHCP for assigning IP addresses. TCP 21 is used by FTP for file transfers, while UDP 161 is used by SNMP for network management. So with respect to the scenario where the network administrator has to set up a remote access solution, this will be done using ports TCP 3389, which is option A. This brings us to the end of the video for the ports and protocols you need to know in order to pass the CompTIA A+ certification exam. Don't forget to like, comment, and share. And if you found this video helpful, please leave a comment to know how this video has helped you so that others will be encouraged and prepare better to take the exam. Also hit the subscribe button so that you'll be notified for when our next informative video drops. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.